Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate y'all for tuning in. If this is your first time, we'd love for you all to hit the subscribe button and the bell so that you are notified for when we release new stuff. Secret Invasion episode 4. We're kind of flying by here.
There's only 6?
Yeah.
Damn.
I felt this was a little anticlimactic for me.
Oh, I liked it because I liked the dialogue that Fury had with his wife.
Okay, that was the redeeming part of the episode, for sure. Fury, his wife, and Gravik are kind of carrying the show for me.
Yeah.
Emilia Clarke is doing the best that she can, but in 6 episodes for 40 minutes, you can only get so much screen time.
I really want to know what they were thinking with the 6 episodes.
I was thinking about this. I really was. I think Secret Invasion should have been an Avengers movie.
Isn't it leading into the Captain America movie?
But still, it's like, this feels like an Avengers level threat. Or at least in theory, it should be. And, you've got aliens. You've got, quote unquote, corrupt government. You've got Nick Fury. And on top of all that else, like, not to mention, you have like some pretty big name actors that you pulled in with Emilia Clarke, Samuel Jackson, Don Cheadle. And I feel like when you place something of this magnitude to a 6-episode Disney Plus show, it has to feel very
insular.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, mm-hmm. Exactly. Because I know that, like, there are moments where superheroes are sort of dealing with things on their own. But it is always just sort of common knowledge that when things get too out of hand, we call in for backup. We call our friends. They sort of come in, right? Like you saw it, like Infinity War was like you ripped it out of a comic book. Superheroes just popping up left and right. But even in some of like Captain America, like it wasn't just him. Like Natasha showed up. We got Falcon, right? He shows up. Even Samuel Jackson is there. Maria Hill's there. So like there are people around. It's not just like 1 or 2 people. And I feel like what happened with Russia, there's no reason for Sam Wilson to not show up. Or like it feels weird that we haven't seen Sam Wilson yet. Or like we haven't seen Bruce, or we haven't seen She-Hulk, right? We haven't seen any of these people who are not dealing with like the celestial magic stuff like Doctor Strange. I've been enjoying this show. Like, don't get me wrong. I've been having a blast. But I do feel like the stakes should be higher for something like this. That's what I've sort of, because I'm like, why does it feel like there should be more? Because we're talking about politicians and presidents and senators. Countries are being hit with attacks. And I'm like, this feels like it should be bigger. No, I don't know. But that was something that I thought of, that I do think, like you said, it'll most likely tie into what happens in Captain America 4, which will probably make it a lot more interesting. But like, there's a difference with Secret Invasion leading up into Captain America 4 versus Winter Soldier leading up into Civil War. Like, the stakes felt higher once we got to Civil War than I think we would feel once we get into Captain America 4. I don't know. That's just kind of how I felt.
I feel like it just depends on how they end it. I feel like you just can't try to conclude it in 6 episodes. If this is just an entry point to what's going on, then I don't really have a problem with it. But in my mind right now, it feels like everybody's very fractured. Like, it kind of feels like that's sort of what the groundwork that they're laying is, that like, it doesn't seem like the vast majority of the people still actively working as superheroes are very connected.
Yes, they are not connected, as in Fury's probably not going to be heading to SHIELD headquarters and calling on all of the, but I feel like just you as, like, the Accords are gone, and so like you as Captain America, you would want to intervene.
The reason why I feel like it didn't bother me was that it feels like everything that's happening right now is still very low key. Like, how many people really know about the Skrulls? We don't know. And how many people can he trust to tell he doesn't know, because you don't know who is who. from the outside looking in, this might not look like a world level threat yet.
Maybe, but I think it would have made the stakes feel higher if we saw more important characters. Because, yeah, like Fury's like, I don't want to get the Avengers involved because I don't know who is and isn't a Skrull. I would like to see that on the screen. I would like to see the paranoia a little bit more than what we've gotten so far, because the biggest reveal was Rhodey, but a lot of us were kind of speculating on that so far. So far, aside from Rhodey, there hasn't been that feeling of, I really don't know who is who. You know what I mean? Like, so I think a movie could have established that a little bit better, but I'm still enjoying. Mm-hmm. I love the show. I need to know what their answer is.
I think the best thing that they can do is not have one. I think you have to end it unresolved. I think that's the only thing you can do. You have to end it in a way where everything has gone to shit. That's the only way that it makes sense to only have 2 episodes left.
That, and also I need Fury to feel a little bit more apologetic to their situation. What I think is missing from the show is so much of the show is just very centered around Fury stopping Gravik. But you're stopping Gravik because you let him and his entire like race of people down. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so I feel like I really need them to just explore a little bit more on the fact that Fury, like, all of this is your fault. And like there have been some scenes where like that clearly was like supposed to be the purpose, like when we got the flashback when Talos introduced everyone to Nick Fury, or certain scenes with Gravik and Talos, like it's supposed to, but in just 6 episodes it's very quick. Mm-hmm. Like I don't really have enough time to process the fact that there's real conflict here.
Yeah, I really want to know, Kevin Feige, what you were thinking there, buddy. Because the thing is, like, seasons used to be like 20 episodes long. Like
right.
That used to be like standard. Like even for hour-long shows, like you would get like 20 episodes of One Tree Hill before it went off season, right? Mm-hmm. Fine, if you think that's too long, okay. 6 is really weird. I just really want to know, like, why did you guys settle on that number? When you were sitting down writing, you didn't start to feel like maybe this isn't enough time. Like when you were like when you're at like episode 4 and you've just reached the climactic moment of the show, you weren't like, ooh, maybe we did tack a few extras on. Like, I'm very curious to know what, like, is there some money thing going on? Like,
this is what always happens with these Disney Plus shows. Episode 1 always starts off kind of strong. You get a sense of where everything's going. You can clearly see that they put a lot of their budget for the show in episode 1. Episode 2 comes out and it slows down like quite a bit, right? Episode 3, a little redundant to episode 2, but then they kind of pick things back up again. Then episode 4, we get all of this action. Episode 5, it leads us at a place where we're like, oh, this is good, but it feels rushed. And then episode 6 comes along.
They wrap that up in a nice tidy little bow real quick.
Oh my gosh. It's just so frustrating. And so I know Bob Iger came out with this statement where he was saying that Disney Plus came out with too many MCU content, and that sort of hurt the brand of Marvel. I don't think it's the number of content.
No, I think it's the quality of the content.
Some of these shows would have been a lot better if you just made it a movie or you gave it more episodes.
I always feel like with all the shows, I enjoy them all. Like, I don't necessarily feel like the 2nd or 3rd episode slow down for me. I feel like to me, it feels like the appropriate amount of like build up and laying down the foundation. It's when I get to like episode 4 and I'm like, oh, but this is about to be over. And I'm like, oh, they don't have enough time.
Yes.
That's what always happens to me. It's like, I'm having a great time. And then I remember that they're going to have to finish it. And I'm like, oh, they're not going to be able to do that well.
And
like,
then
there's no way.
You're going to get the classic Marvel, like sort of phase 3 fight.
Yes.
You know?
Which also sometimes they don't look as good in the shows as they do in the movies.
Yeah, they still have the money for it.
I just wish they hadn't done that to me.
Yo, oh my word.
I felt like her show was absolutely delightful until they started focusing on her as a superhero. Like, honestly, like the first few episodes, I was like, I'm honestly down for this to just be like a fun little teen. She's a superhero on the side, but like we're focusing on her teen life and it's just introducing her to her character. I would have been chill with that. I didn't need her to like do all this stuff. I would have been perfectly fine with just like a, like, you know how like, okay, because that's how superhero shows used to be. Like, think of like Static Shock or like those kinds of shows.
Hell yeah.
It was just like, it's just a good time. You're just having a good time. There's no big thing happening here. It's just like, oh, you're just having a great time. And then every once in a while, you know, they have a little conflict. They handle it in the episode and you move on and it's fine.
Part of it was they had to keep the money coming in. That's why you needed all those episodes. I think what HBO realized is the way you keep things relevant is to just keep putting out good content. Like, Disney Plus just has not mastered that in the way that they were doing with the movies.
Yeah.
That's part of it, because people like to talk about phase 4 and 5, but even like 2018 and 2019, there was still like a pretty significant number of Marvel stuff that were coming out. You know, we didn't have an issue with that because it was all good.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Some of it wasn't as good, but it was like, it's fine.
But it didn't feel like this was mid in Marvel standards. I don't like. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp was not like the greatest film, but it was still better than Quantumania. You know what I mean? Like, I just.
Oh God.
It's crazy how everyone's kind of just forgotten about that movie.
I'm feeling a little differently about the show after that TikTok.
Oh, about the
anti-Semitism. I remember earlier while we were recording, I asked because I had an inkling. You did. I had an inkling. I was like, I don't know. Secret takeover. That is like a thing. And I was like, maybe not. Like, nobody else is saying it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, I'm not seeing the Skrulls as like a villain. Like, for me, I'm like, I get where they're coming from. But the show is pitting it like Fury has to take down this group of Skrulls because they're trying, like, so I think that also sometimes makes it hard for me to pick up on because I'm usually very sympathetic to that group of people. Like, it was the same thing with Attack on Titan. It's like I'm and in that show, like, you're meant to be sympathetic to them, obviously, but like I'm very sympathetic to like the Eldians. And so I'm not picking up on it, but then when it's broken down and it's like, no, this is how this type of prejudice looks. And it's like the anti-Semitism isn't whether or not you're supposed to root against them. The anti-Semitism is the trope that they're playing on, this idea that there's a race of people that has these abilities that's hidden in plain sight, or that can take over or destroy the world at a moment's notice.
Pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Yeah, like that's it. So whether or not you're supposed to root for that group of people or not is kind of like irrelevant to like whether or not it's anti-Semitic.
What people don't always recognize, a lot of conspiracy theories originated with some real hatred towards Jewish people.
Yeah.
And so where I've always wrestled with is, are you able to use a concept for entertainment purpose and still recognize in other contexts the origin is something that was extremely harmful?
Captain Marvel, they did that. Like, they sort of flipped this whole idea on its head of like this secret group of people being a danger to us, and in the end it's like they weren't the danger, right? The problem is now like you're reverse, like you're doing a little Uno reverse type deal.
See, and that's part of the problem. I feel like if they wanted to make it clear that they were not trying to vilify the Skrulls, you need more Skrull presence on the show, because right now I'm not seeing the difference. It just kind of seems like Skrulls are the problem. But I think what could have helped in the conversation is if you were to witness internally that there were Skrulls that were against Gravik's plan.
I mean, we are seeing that.
Yeah, but it's just Talos. You know what I mean? Like, I think it would have been more impactful if it was a little bit more like with the X-Men. Like, you had two clear, significant groups of people with clear personalities, and you knew a lot of them on each side. And like, there is an ideological tension between like internally with this group. But right now, Gravik represents the Skrulls for the most part. Like his ideology is what you're supposed to see where most of them sort of land. I don't know. I need more of that.
I don't know if there's like a really good way to do this particular storyline. Like I really don't know if there's like a really responsible way to handle like a secret conspiracy overtaking. Like I don't know.
Because is that story necessary to share, knowing how closely it aligns to a real life conspiracy theory?
Right.
I think it's easy for me as a black guy watching that and turning off that information and still watching the show and finding it extremely entertaining. But I know a lot of people do that for things that are extremely anti-black, and I would call them out on that also. What also makes it a little weird is that they were going to call Captain America a New World Order. That's what also makes it a little iffy. Like, there's a clear history there when I'm like, none of y'all.
Nobody was like, hold on.
Maybe we shouldn't use that. Y'all, I know that there are some intelligent people working at Marvel Studios. One of y'all had to have been like, this is a terrible idea.
I was going to say, like, maybe if the Skrulls were like the main character, but like before this, like if we had like, if it was like we watched the Skrulls like from the beginning, like when their planet is destroyed and they're left without a home, and like from their perspective, like we're watching all of this, like we have movies or shows or whatever about this, and then like we see them like when they are brought to Earth, and from their perspective we watch what happens when they're here on Earth, and then we watch how like different ideas of how to solve the problem grow from that. Like maybe, I don't know. But we did get a lot of that in Captain Marvel. That's part of why when he made that point, that's where it felt like I couldn't disagree with him anymore. Yeah. I think the shape-shifting thing just might kind of just be like I don't know if you can really redeem that one.
I know we talk a lot about the villain problem in the MCU. Mm-hmm. And part of the issue is they can't make the villain make too much sense. And so they always like add like just like a little thing to the side that makes like him like almost like irredeemable to an extent. I feel like the convictions of these characters makes a lot of sense, even though their actions are irredeemable in order to get where they want to go.
Right.
The problem is at the end of the conflict, a lot of times the protagonist doesn't move enough in the right direction. That I think is a common theme with a lot of these Marvel villains and antagonists. It doesn't feel like the protagonist has fully learned their lesson. It's always like, yes, I understand where you're coming from, but you can't do X, Y, and Z because that's wrong. We talked a little bit about this with Killmonger. I thought about a while after you made that with the ending of Black Panther, where, Killmonger's like, we need to liberate like all these black people around the world. And then they were like,
let's build a youth center.
You know what I mean?
Build a Boys and Girls Club.
You see what I mean? Like Killmonger trying to use the tactics of white supremacy to liberate black people was clearly the wrong place to go. But that does not mean black people do not need to be liberated. It would have been more impactful if T'Challa fully grappled with that, as opposed to just, we did this kid wrong because of what we did to his father. That isn't the only conflict happening in the film, but that's the only thing a lot of the main characters focused on throughout the film.
I 100% agree with you. I just never have the expectation that they're going to go any further because it's made by a bunch of billionaires. And
no, you're right. But seeing that does make me a little nervous for how they're going to handle Magneto, because we've talked a little about this before. My problem with the way that the Fox universe handled Magneto, as great as both of the actors were, the way that they would always frame the conversation is that you've got Charles over here, and then you've got Magneto on the other side, and the best place for them to go is to just meet in the middle. No, it's just not. That's not realistic. To
be honest, I don't even think that was the way they portrayed it. From my recollection, was that Charles was right. That's how they portrayed it. Well, he's the hero of that franchise.
I don't know, because in Days of Future Past, he admits that he was wrong when he saw what happened to all of the mutants with the Sentinels.
Yeah.
You can say some of this is just like the quality of the directing and the writing. In Dark Phoenix, it still doesn't feel like he's learned his lesson about what is necessary for the true freedom of mutants. Magneto literally takes a bunch of mutants and they're just living somewhere else in like sort of like a sovereign land that's given to them by the government, because he's like, I've had enough. We're just going to leave. We're not going to try to integrate. And while Magneto makes that decision, Charles is still like on that wave of, if we keep doing this stuff for the government, they'll eventually see us as human.
I don't know. Like what would, okay, ideally, like let's take Black Panther, for example. What would we want T'Challa to do? Like ideally, like what would we really want to see him do?
You could have used your vibranium in the way we saw in Ant-Man. They used their PIM particles to help with housing after the blimp. So that to me, okay. And now I'm thinking about this. That was actually one of the underrated messages in Ant-Man Quantumania that kind of gets forgotten about, because everyone had expectation that this is going to be a multiversal war. But the fact that they were using the PIM particles to help with a like structural problem like housing. Now in their world, the blip is sort of what led to that issue, but it is still a matter of like, you have the resources, the infrastructure, the power to solve a problem that is not punching your way out of it. Like you have the tools and resources to alleviate struggle from people. I'm not entirely sure why we couldn't see Wakandans do a little bit more with the resources and tools that they have. I think Wakandans could have used their enormous amount of wealth to rehabilitate a lot of communities of color around the world. In the first film, Claw was like, they've been mining their vibranium mountain for thousands of years and they've barely scratched the surface. I feel like they could have done way more in alleviating a lot of those problems. Like obviously like a thing like Flint, Michigan probably isn't existing in their world, but clearly there would have to be similar issues happening in the MCU's world that the Wakandans could have clearly just been like, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and quickly like fix that. That's like chump change to them. Yeah. You know what I mean? That I think could have been where they could have alleviated, and potentially Killmonger doesn't do what he does. Some of these systemic problems that like Black people are facing are like perpetual, and some of them are like, we're not going to fix something that happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like that, like infrastructure in Black neighborhoods. Yeah, they could have fixed it, but like that was a problem that happened way before. Right? New Deal comes in, they don't do a lot of that in Black neighborhoods. That's kind of where I'm like, you know
I agree. I mean? No, I definitely agree with that. I think that there's definitely more. To be honest, my whole thing with Wakanda is y'all could have prevented chattel slavery. We don't even have to be in this situation. Wakanda, you could have taken care of that easy. Mm-hmm. You could have. That could have been done.
You know, when Ezra Klein would say like rehabilitating a neighborhood so that officers are no longer needed. Like part of the over policing is like the poverty that's sort of attached to it. If you are eliminating poverty completely from America, you've completely rehabilitized like these neighborhoods. Police are gone. That would change so many social dynamics happening in those towns. You know what I mean? Like what I'm envisioning is Wakanda playing a vital role in restoring or building these neighborhoods so that they're healthy, because it wouldn't bankrupt them at all. Like they would be able to handle all of that, even if it took 30, 40, 50 years, which is probably what it would take to like revitalize a community.
My other question then is, do they do this everywhere? Like, do they do this all over the globe? Because I said the thing is, Killmonger was trying to help. He was trying to.
Bro, if they got the resources to build weapons for the globe, they got the resources to healthily provide aid and resources for the globe also. I feel like Wakandans are a little stingy. We don't talk about that enough. Mm-hmm. They're a little stingy. This is another thing. I'm so glad you brought this up. So we're watching Secret Invasion, and so many other people are watching Secret Invasion, and a lot of us are picking up on what you would see as sort of like racial allegories that they're tackling throughout the show, right? Why is it such a problem for people to consume media and pull racial allegories from a film or television show? We saw a lot of people in our comment section for some of the ones that I posted on our YouTube channel and the ones that I posted obviously on the TikTok one, that had like legit issues with the fact that we were pulling allegories that are race centered in the show. Now, obviously, some of them are racist. That's a given. But I do think there are others that genuinely believe if the directors and showrunners do not explicitly come out and say this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing are about Black people, a lot of fans think that we have no business pulling racial allegories from the story. This is the problem when you have a race neutral worldview, because you consume everything through the lens of your worldview. And so if you feel like I don't see color and race isn't a problem, whenever you see someone try to consume a film or television show where they're clearly talking about race, you think that we're absurd. And listen, man, I don't know how to get people from that place. I don't even want to tackle that as like a job, but you got to be real out of touch with reality to think that race isn't going to show up in film and television shows. Because even someone like in the film Nope, right? Jordan Peele was not having clear commentary on race as the main component of that story. But as a Black person, we're watching this and we're clearly seeing moments where race is showing up. It is evident. It's something that you can't ignore. It immediately happens when a race is present in a film. And for some reason, when you point that out, people think that that's a bad thing. That's what I don't understand.
I think that white people really have no concept or understanding of how prevalent race is in the lives of people of color. I think it's a completely foreign worldview to them. That like quite literally, I think about it all the time. Yeah. Like it's like I can't not think about it, right? Like it's such a present factor in my life that it's always on my mind. Like that's just the truth. And I think that you would be hard pressed to find a person of color who did not share that experience. I think I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but like the Black people that I know in my life, like it's a very prevalent part of every part of your life. Mm-hmm. It's relevant when dating. It's relevant in your work life. It's relevant in your family life. It's relevant. There's no part of your life that it doesn't impact. So it's not like I can just switch that off when I'm watching TV. Like exactly. It's always there. But I think that is they don't understand that because that's just literally not true for them. Until they get to a point in their anti-racism where they are constantly thinking about their own whiteness and how it is relevant in any given aspect of their life, until they reach that place, I think they just genuinely they don't get it. Yeah. And I think it's hard. I would imagine that would be very difficult to get to that point. I think the only people that I can think of that I know who really have reached that point as white people, I think are white people who are interacting with black people all the time, where you're in a situation where like you're actually the racial minority. So like actually this feels like now I actually can't ignore it.
Rewatching Andor is proving that this is the most well-written Star Wars medium like ever. I'm pretty confident in saying that now. Like it, and especially now that they got nominated for the Emmy, I'm like, I don't know, man.
It's a tough year for
y'all are missing out. Star Wars fans have been so many Star Wars fans have been crying for years about wanting something new, wanting something that felt different, wanting something that was less cheesy and a little bit more serious. You got that with Andor. It is the most refreshing thing for Star Wars that you could probably want to consume.
I think they want to watch a lightsaber fight and be on the edge of their seat and feel like, you know, like the stakes are high and like this is, you know, I think that's what they want.
You're going to get that with the Acolyte. And with the Ahsoka, that trailer that they just dropped felt like this was going to be serious.
And then they'll find something else to complain about because those shows are about black women. So,
But there was one, I don't remember what the younger character's name is that's part of that group that Andor does the heist with. But the kid, Arvel's making fun of Karis and he's like, oh, the only thing keeping us from liberty is a few more ideas. Like he says it in kind of like a tongue-in-cheek. He's like poking fun at him a bit. And Karis is like, yes, like that is exactly it. And then he said something else where he was like, the pace of repression outstrips our ability to understand it. That is who wrote that episode? Who wrote that episode? Because that was one of the most well-written lines that encapsulates the social political climate of our country right now in the greatest way possible. Because Arvel's kind of making fun of him, but Karis is right. Like, yeah, we do need new ideas to formulate our thought process, to consider that there are better ways for us to live, better ways for us to exist. I remember back in like 2015 when Bernie Sanders was starting to get a little bit more famous and he was like on that wave of like, we got to like forgive student loan debt and we got to make college free. And people were like thinking that he's just some kind of nut job that's like on the fringe.
And now that's like mainstream.
Mainstream right now. I feel like that was such an underrated line because one, Karis is the youngest person in the group. And so they look at him as like
idealistic kid.
Yeah, he's this Gen Z kid just saying stuff and he doesn't understand the world.
Gen Z for real.
You know what I mean? But he is the one person that's presenting new ideas that are healthier for a more productive society. This kid was like, it's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident. And think about what's happened in the last like year. All the things that Supreme Court has struck down, all the things that happened at these Republican leaning states across the country.
It overwhelms you.
It is so overwhelming. And you're just kind of left like, okay, I can't. It's just too much. It's just too much. Bro, I had to pause and I was like, it was so good.
Yeah.
It was so good.
No, I had that written down too for the exact same reason. It's just so true. There's so many things happening in so many different directions. And you can't, like, first of all, like, public opinion and public attention gets so easily off track. You can't keep track of everything that's happening. And also we don't always draw the connections between all the things to like point to the fact that like, yeah, there's a lot going on, but like it's kind of all one thing. Like but yeah, it literally does, like, it just sort of overwhelms your ability to even to think about it, to take it in, and then to go the extra step and start thinking about what to do about it and how to respond and how to handle it.
That one was so good.
What Andor is doing is, I think, the thing that Marvel can't do or is too scared to do, in that, like, because because the characters in Andor are presented to you as not morally gray, but like they're not really supposed to be heroes. There's not like this very strict moral code. So like, I mean, like they're committing a crime, like they're stealing a bunch of shit, like you know, like that's. But like a Marvel movie would not do that. Like a Marvel movie would be too scared to portray a hero doing something like that.
Portraying the protagonist.
Yes, the protagonist doing something like that, doing something that's that disruptive and that also is like by the law considered to be wrong. You know, it reminds me of that movie I was telling you about, How to Blow Up a Pipeline.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's like you had like there are other there are other strategies and tactics to meeting these oppressive systems that are not like going full like psycho mass murderer, and that are also not like all kumbaya. Like there is things in the middle, but it requires people to you literally are sacrificing everything. Like you have to be so all in that you're like, if I go to prison, if I die, if I endanger myself, if I get seriously injured, if I understand all of these risks and I'm still willing to do this. You have to be that all in, and you're doing something that's going to have massive disruptive impact. And like the truth is, it's not only going to impact people at the top. That's the other thing that makes it kind of morally gray too, is like if you're disrupting money flow, that's one of those like sort of trickle effect type of things.
Yeah.
Like you're going to disrupt the money flow for a lot of people. Like they kind of talk about it.
A lot of innocent people.
Yeah.
We got Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah, and Mission Impossible, we got to see this weekend at some point.
Yeah. I feel like people aren't always thinking about how this is like an historic moment for cinema, with Barbie and Oppenheimer sort of happening at the same time. The marketing has been exquisite. For the first time in how long, you've got two films that are not a part of a franchise, that's not a part of DC or Marvel, and it's the only thing that people are talking about.
Yeah, that's true.
The viral marketing online with the Barbieheimer, people are making T-shirts, hats. Everyone's
people are dressing up.
Yeah,
that hasn't happened since Black Panther.
You know what I mean? Like this is a pretty big deal. And then what also made it interesting is at these movie premieres, the actors left. Matt Damon, he got interviewed and he's like, yeah, I'm with the WGA. Like, I'm all for this. When we look back at this moment, that's going to be a pretty historic time.
Did you know that the nanny is the president of the actors union? Fran from the nanny.
What?
Yeah, she's the president of like that organization of actors. I can't remember what it's called, Astra or something. That organization that is striking, that's organizing the strike for actors. She's the president of that.
Why do I love that so much? I love that so much.
Somebody posted a clip of her speech,
and
somebody in the comments, I was like, yeah, the nanny leading a revolution was not on my 2023 bingo card, but I love it.
She is for the people.
They're going to have to really get it together, because I was talking to Lacey about this the other day, and she was pointing out how like having the writers and the actors on strike at the same time, the impact that's going to have on California's economy is massive. Like that literally puts a halt on everything. It's not just Hollywood. It's like all the other things connected to it. Like who's going to be booking these places to hold these events and these premieres? Who's going to be ordering catering for these writers' rooms or these sets where they're filming things? Like the overflow of that's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And I just feel like y'all just got to cave. Give them come on. Like give them the money.
Yeah.
The writers and the actors.
Yeah. Because and I think people will look at that and they'll get nervous and see that as going too far. Listen, man, you look back at any productive, successful sort of revolution, they had to apply a lot of pressure. That's just how it goes.
That's how it is.
That's just how it goes. And it is unfortunate because, yeah, in this particular instance, these producers are forcing some pretty tough choices that these union people have to make. But that's not on the actors. That's not on the writers. That's on the producers. We just got to accept that.
We unfortunately live in an economy where all of us are dependent on a select few very rich people.
Yeah.
All of us are connected to them.
Yep.
So yeah, it's really hard to impact them without impacting everybody else.
Exactly.
But you got to do it. The way that we talk about some of these successful movements, it really shades our view of what they're supposed to look like. Cause I'm like, I don't know, like people always talk about like the bus boycott and stuff. I'm like, Black folks in that town literally like were walking like to work for a year. It wasn't like a little weekend thing. It wasn't like it was
committed.
Literally for a year. They
committed.
didn't take the bus. Like things have to get uncomfortable for a little bit. It's at a certain point, it just kind of
will be okay.
Yeah, it just
a year or two delay in movies or TV shows is worth it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go back and rewatch.
Now that we have streaming, like I'm like, you can literally watch so much. I mean, well, unless at some point they're like, don't watch the streaming. This thing's on streaming. They haven't said that yet, but like,
we'll
if
see.
They do, we'll see.
I'll do it. I swear to God, I will.
I'll just play more Sims.
I got 2K. I'll play my video games all day. I don't give a damn.
Yeah, it's just, this is how it goes. This is how it works. Also, I just want to say, this is also why we need unions, because like essentially my understanding is that these organizations are basically just unions for writers and actors, like kind of the equivalent of that union. Like when there's like big like that's why like so when truckers and stuff like do they've like in the past they've held like really successful protests and strikes, like truckers, they're unionized. Like you actually need a union because they sort of serve as like the protective barriers that like you can take a huge risk that could cost you like your job and your livelihood. Cause like you have like the union is kind of there sort of shielding you a little bit from the worst of it, and also like organizing ways to keep everybody supported. That's kind of that you need. Like in places where there's big teacher strikes, it's the union. Like,
and this is why we both support police unions.
That's not fun. The government doesn't need a union. Okay.
I had to get that reaction out of you.
I think I stand by that. Maybe other government workers, like maybe postal workers too, need a union.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Police unions are different.
No.
That's a different thing.
They can go. All right. I think that covers it all.
Yep.
See you all next time.
Bye.
Peace.